It is the evening of February 28, 2017, and earlier this evening, President Donald Trump gave his first speech to a joint session of Congress. This is my report and analysis on that speech. I counted about 60 plus rounds of applause during the speech. I'm sure that is an undercount because I did lose count at one point. He made a point right from the beginning that the United States needs to put American citizens first. I completely agree with that because it is the responsibility of all country to put that country's citizens first. That's what a citizen is. A citizen has all the rights that belong to being a member of that country. Non-citizens do not have those rights. It is the first duty of every country to look out for the welfare of its citizens above and beyond anything else. An interesting thing about House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi that she seemed to look angry every time the president spoke of creating jobs. I don't know why someone would be against job creation, but he would speak of job creation and the camera would swing to her. That happened twice and she looked very angry. That seems irrational to me. There were loud cheers for the border wall. It was discussed that the economy hasn't been so great for a very long time because 94 million Americans are out of the labor force and not working. Or I think said about 1 out of 5 adult males are out of work. That would translate to a real unemployment rate, if it was counted that way. That would translate to a real unemployment rate of about 20%. This should not be a surprise. There has not been strong growth in the gross domestic product for a very long time. One thing that never happened under the Obama administration was coming up with a plan to actually generate good-paying jobs. They worked on health care. They played a big role in pulling the United States back from Great Depression II. However, there was never a plan to bring the country to economic health, consistent economic growth, so that jobs would be created in the private sector. It's great to have programs. I'm a big believer in programs. You need all kinds of programs to help people, but it can't be about programs alone. You also do need some kind of a healthy business environment, and that just hasn't been around for a very long time. It hasn't been around for about a decade now. He talked about tax cuts. There is a potential problem that tax cuts won't work to spur the economy. If wealthy people just pocket the money, as they did with the Bush tax cuts, then it probably won't be very effective. He emphasized the need for fair trade. That is true. Other countries tax American products when they go into those countries, and Harley-Davidson was cited as an example. They say that it is very difficult to sell their products in other countries because the countries tax their products going in the door. And whereas business is good in the United States, business is for Harley-Davidson is not so good in other countries because they do have certain protectionist measures in effect. The need was discussed for more protectionist measures for U.S. products, and that certainly does make sense. America has been victimized by trade deals for a very long time. He mentioned the possibility that the United States should move to a system of merit-based immigration because the problem that has existed with immigration up to this point is that low-skilled, low-wage people have been encouraged to migrate to the United States legally, and this has depressed wages for American workers. That is a violation of the sacred trust that all American citizens should have in their government to look after their interest first. As I said previously, it is the responsibility of all governments of all countries to look after the welfare of their citizens first. Unrestrained, unlimited immigration does depress wages for American workers. It does take jobs away from American workers. And this idea that low-wage immigrants only take jobs that Americans don't want is largely a myth. There is some truth to it in some industries, in particular agriculture, but it is not the whole truth of the matter. Other countries in the world do have merit-based immigration systems. Canada, as a matter of fact, has a merit-based immigration system. If you don't believe that, look into immigrating to Canada and see what you would have to do to go there. You can't just go there and immediately go on public assistance. You have to be able to support yourself in Canada. You have to be able to demonstrate that you're going to be able to support yourself in Canada. You can't just go up there and get a work job in a manufacturing plant, and like so many people do coming to the United States. Canada has a merit-based immigration system. The immigration authorities want to make sure that the people who move to Canada will be able to support themselves and not have to rely on public welfare. That's a very important part of moving to any country, and certainly it should be in coming to the United States. Merit-based immigration is a very good idea. Other countries do use it. The United States should use a system like that too. Infrastructure. There was a proposal to move toward $1 trillion worth of investment in infrastructure. Now, you can make a hell of a lot of things happen with that $1 trillion investment in infrastructure. A lot of very good things was happening. He talked about the interstate highway system that came to fruition under President Dwight Eisenhower. That was one huge infrastructure project that began in the 1950s under Eisenhower, and he said that it's time for the United States to do infrastructure again. I completely agree. It is problematic, though, that he wants to do it with a combination of public and private investment. The problem with American businesses is that they want everybody else to pay for everything. They keep their bottom line under control by having everybody give them everything. And, you know, that may sound strange to some people, because business people are the ones who are always bragging about how hard they work and criticizing lazy people that they say don't want to work, and yet they, the business folks, want everybody to give them everything too. So I have a hard time believing that business folks are going to invest billions of dollars in infrastructure. I don't know what incentive could possibly be offered to get them to do that, to spend their own money. There were loud cheers about repealing and replacing Obamacare. Now, it is true that it is failing. When Obamacare was being promoted and when it was being debated and when it was being passed in the law, the idea that was promoted was that everybody would have this marketplace and they would be able to shop for the best plans available. That was a huge selling point. Well, in a third of the counties in the United States, there's only one company participating. That is not much choice, is it? And I happened to work with Obamacare directly for a while, as helping people to enroll in that program. And during the time that I worked with it, there was only one company available. And of the policies offered by that one company, there were only a couple that people could even consider, because there were only a couple that made any kind of sense as far as being able to pay low rates and also get quality care. Also, premiums have been rising dramatically, and as the CEO of Aetna said the other day, it has in fact moved to a desktop spiral. Now, people who are slightly above the poverty level for their households and they have the best premium rates available, they're not necessarily feeling the weight of these premium increases yet. They will feel it eventually. In 2018, things being what they are right now, we could very well have a situation in which there will be areas with nobody participating. And in those areas, once the last company pulls out, Obamacare won't be available to anybody in those counties. The federal government does not have a mechanism for forcing anybody to participate in such counties, nor do they have a backup system for providing insurance when no company wants to participate. So people would just be left out of Obamacare. That is very real. It's very real that that is probably going to happen in 2018, because the costs just keep going higher and higher. Now, the proposal that President Trump talked about included providing health savings account and tax credits. I am skeptical about that, because the problem that people have is their income. You know, people already struggle to pay their bills, and they just don't have the money to put funds aside into a health savings account or to spend money on health care and get it back on their taxes. That is simply not workable for most people. So while Obamacare is definitely in a death spiral, and it definitely is failing, I don't know that tax credits and health savings accounts are going to do a lot of good. And this state flexibility with Medicaid The thing about state governments is that the people who run state governments are a bunch of self-serving, low-life bastards, and they don't care about anybody except for the people who voted for them and people that they hope to win over to their side. So I think that state flexibility on Medicaid is going to leave a lot of people out. I know it certainly will in the Deep South states and some of the Upper Great Plains states. So that I am very skeptical about. Even though something needs to be done, Obamacare does need to be replaced. But I'm skeptical about a couple of aspects of the replacement. Discussion was made about speeding up the FDA drug approval process. That certainly does need to happen because there are all kinds of people who could benefit from all kinds of drugs, and they don't have access to those drugs because it takes so long for the FDA to approve the drugs. So that is something that needs work, the FDA approval process. There was discussion about a task force concerning helping victims of immigration violent crimes committed by illegal immigrants. And you could just hear the groans in the room from one side, because there are a lot of people in the United States that people who have been victimized by illegal immigrants, they are just treated like marginal trash by people who want open borders. They don't even count. Now, that is ridiculous. How can you preach tolerance and not care about people who have been victimized by illegal immigrants? That is a legitimate issue. It does need to be dealt with. I'm not a big immigration person anyway. They talk about the United States, and I never have been. They talk about the United States being a nation of immigrants. It hasn't really been a nation of immigrants for a very long time. I wasn't an immigrant. My parents weren't. My grandparents weren't. My great-grandparents were not immigrants, and I don't think the generation before them were immigrants either. There was a time in U.S. history when it was a country of immigrants, but that hasn't been true in a very long time now. Most people now here in the United States are native born. And this issue of illegal immigrants who come in and commit crimes and victimize American citizens, that needs to be dealt with. Those people do count. People who have been victimized by illegal immigrants absolutely do count, and their voices need to be heard, and that problem does need to be dealt with. So this task force on dealing with immigration, crime, and violence, I agree with it. That's very important. Now, what are the problem areas with the President's address? I heard a lot of good proposals in that address, but also there are some problem areas. First of all, the tax cuts designed to stimulate the economy may not work. If wealthy people just pocket the tax credits as they did with the Bush tax credits, then it won't work very well. I'm skeptical about tax credits to spur tax cuts to spur the economy. Another problem is he wants to have public and private capital mixed to produce a $1 trillion infrastructure program. I don't know how private businesses are ever going to be persuaded to spend that kind of money. I'm very skeptical. Businesses usually want everybody to give them everything, and I don't know how they're going to be motivated to spend that kind of money on infrastructure. Another problem, state flexibility with Medicaid, giving states a maximum flexibility. I'm afraid that what will happen there is a lot of people will just be left out in the cold, because state governments, quite frankly, don't give a damn about their people. And in southern states in particular, the state politicians, the people that run the state political apparatus, they really, really hate the poor. So I'm extremely skeptical about state flexibility with Medicaid. Then tax credits and health savings accounts to help access health care. I see that as possibly not solving very much, because the problem people have with those things is not having the income to be able to have health savings accounts or to spend money on health care and tax cuts back later. So I thought some very good proposals in that speech, but these are 4 areas that I thought were potentially problematic, and I'm very skeptical about. So the speech was a mixed bag. There was good stuff in there, but there's also these 4 areas that could be significant problems. It wasn't 100% good. It certainly wasn't all bad. It was a mixed bag. I will say this, had Hillary Clinton been giving the address, I wouldn't have even paid it any attention, because nothing she would have said would have been mattered, because the Republican House wasn't going to pass any of her stuff, and the House was going to be Republican. it's possible some good things might really actually come out of this administration. We'll see. They've got a few good ideas and some things desperately need to be done, but that's my read on the President's address to Congress this evening. A mixture of good and bad. Some good proposals, 4 potentially problematic areas. And we'll see how that all turns out in the weeks and months ahead.